Yay! We are so here. I am super excited about this. I told Neil this before I hit record, but I will say it publicly. I am excited to have somebody that's not a fan of the program, but to have somebody that covers the program, that knows the program, that I've been listening to, reading anytime I can click something and find something a little like I'm all for it. And so, welcome. Thank you for
Thank you.
agreeing to do this. And thank you for being here. I will let you introduce yourself here in a second. But before he starts, all of his information will be in the description box below. So you can find it, click on it very easily. And then the other thing is, too, is I have Ole Miss here because I believe Ole Miss is not talked about enough. I feel like they are one of those SEC teams that is, they're there. They've been there for a while. They're on an upswing. I think they look good. I love running back situation. I love the quarterback situation. I love the situation altogether. And they are one of the teams I feel like this year, I don't understand why no one's talking about them, but it is what it is. And so I believe they're going to impact this season very much so. And I'm talking to the shapers of the season. So that is why they are here. And I am excited to have you on to just see what you think and feel. I might have cheated a little bit. I know one thing that you've said that I heard, and it's about Ole Miss's defense. We'll talk about it. But other than that, I would love for you to just like introduce yourself, whatever you want us to know, and then we'll just start talking about these Ole Miss Rebels.
Yeah, sure. I'm Neil McCready. I cover Ole Miss. This is going into my 19th season covering
That's
Ole
incredible.
Miss. I'm now with Rebels247, which is part of the 24/7 Sports Network, CBS. My background before covering Ole Miss, I was traditional media. I covered Auburn for 6 seasons in newspapers. Then I covered the SEC as a whole with the Mobile Register for another 5 before I started to see the writing on the wall with where
Mm.
print journalism was going. I had a radio show with in Mobile on WNSP. It was a daily afternoon show with Taylor Zarzour, who's now the voice of the Tennessee Titans,
Okay.
and also with Sirius XM. He's their main golf guy. If you're a golf person. So yeah, that's my background. And then I've been covering Ole Miss for a while at 24/7 Sports. And then also we have a podcast network called MPW Digital, which has a bunch of different shows. We have an Ole Miss show, a Mississippi State show, and then I do a show twice a week with Tyler Siskey, former Alabama Ole Miss recruiting coordinator, called McCready and Siskey. It's powered by Rain Total Body Fuel, and it's not an Ole Miss show. It's an SEC show. It's a college football show. So if you're not an Ole Miss fan, that's okay. You might really like that show on MPW Digital. And then Tyler does TikTok lives and stuff all the
Okay.
time. So you ought to check that out.
Yeah, I clicked on that one. I think you were wearing an OKC shirt in the one that I saw, and I was like, "Oh, okay. This is different. I like it. I like anybody that loves to just talk about sports, whatever that means to you." So that's awesome. So because you are so insightful and you have so many things that you've been talking about, I might have watched a couple of interviews that you did from SEC Media Day, but I would love to just know what are your overall thoughts about Ole Miss heading into the season? What do you think is something that maybe people just aren't talking about that you're like, hey, hello, we're missing this here?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's understandable why they're a little under the radar. And I mean, they were picked third in the SEC, so I don't really know how under the radar they are. I
Yep.
think that shows that people sort of get it, right? But you know, over the last 6 years, Lane Kiffin is such a personality, and I don't mean this negatively, but I mean he sucked so much of the oxygen out of
Mhm.
the room. It was all about Lane, and Lane did a phenomenal job at Ole Miss. When he got to Ole Miss in December of 2019, it was an irrelevant program. Nobody thought anything about them. There was no juice, no energy around the program. Um, no one talked about them. No one thought about them. They were just there, frankly. And they'd gone through the Hugh Freeze scandal, and they'd gone through the NCAA sanctions, and the program had just lost all of its juice. And Kiffin comes in, and the pandemic hits, and starting in 2021, really, they were good. Suddenly, they're winning games. They're scoring lots of points. Lane's throwing his clipboard into the air and all of that stuff, and people got into them, and they started winning a lot of games. I mean, if you go back to 2021 and go through this past season, only 2 programs in the SEC have won more football games than Ole Miss. It's Georgia and Alabama. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Not Texas or Texas A&M or Oklahoma or any of the other LSU, any of the other programs in the league that probably are, sexier nationally from a traditional standpoint. They've won. And look, I'm an old guy at this point, and I've covered the old era for a long time. I would argue, and I'm gotten to a place where I think I'm right on this. I don't even think that it's all debatable. This new era, like I think whatever you did in the old era, good for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know that that's pertinent today. It's
Agreed.
It'd be like if you were a program that was, man, we dominated in the 50s and the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's clearly a different era.
Right.
The new era now, the players get paid. We have the transfer portal. You have all of these things. And Lane was very, very good at navigating that. And then Ole Miss was a little slow at first to match his energy. And then by the end, that wasn't the case. There was a lot of people around that program and in that program who had a shared passion and a shared drive. And it was a program that a year ago was in the national semifinals with the ball in the air on the final play. So that's kind of where they are. They've been in front of this transfer portal thing for a while.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people in our field don't like to talk about money. It's an uncomfortable topic. I will. I think Ole Miss's payroll this year is somewhere between $35 and $40 million, probably closer to 40 than 35, which is awfully damned competitive. So, I think you're right when you say that this is a team that is probably going to make noise in the league this year and is absolutely one way or the other going to have a say in who wins this league and more importantly, who makes the playoffs from this league.
Well, hello there. Make sure that you have hit that like button. Double check and make sure that you're subscribed to both of our channels if there is a channel attached to the collaboration. Double check and make sure that you follow us on all of our social media accounts because every single person that I'm speaking to has a social media account. And also, don't forget to enjoy this video and leave us a comment in the comment section below. Now let me let you get back to your video. Yep. I agree. And just based on schedule. So this is if you haven't looked at Ole Miss's schedule, they basically touch almost every single person that everybody thinks is going to be a competitor this year. And then when that's the case, that means if they win or they lose, it's going to impact some things. And so I 100% agree with that. So what do you think the strength is of this team? I mean, I'm just going to say the obvious. I think it's like quarterback, running back. But
sure.
but you tell me what you think the strength is of this team this year.
Well, I mean, I think obviously it's Trinidad Chambliss and Kewan Lacy. I mean, that's where you start clearly. And I think in so many ways, kind of going back to your first question, that's one of the reasons they get a little overlooked is now Lane's gone
right
to LSU, but Trinidad's with his personality, and he has a magnetic personality and a magnetic smile, and people love his story. Started his career at Ferris State, won a national championship, came to Ole Miss with no guarantees at all, was the backup quarterback into week 2 last season. I mean, it's a hell of a story. He's a great young man. I keep calling them kids. He's not a kid. He's an exceptional young man. Kewan Lacy was a great story. Kewan started his career at Missouri, didn't play much. They brought in Ahmad Hardy and kind of processed him out, and it worked out for everybody, right? Ahmad Hardy had a phenomenal year at Missouri. I think Kewan had a better year at Ole Miss. It was close. But if you look at his numbers, 24 touchdowns, I think, ran for 2,000 yards, a phenomenal season. So, that's where they start, and they're both back and both healthy. And I think Trinidad will be better this season than he was a year ago. I think he's worked on some things, especially most specifically his deep ball. And then, with Kewan, it's about staying healthy. I think they're going to be able to help keep him healthier this season because they're deeper in their running back room. But I think, to answer your question, if this team ends up being really good, and I think they have a really good chance to do that, it's going to be about defense. They spent
Ooh.
if there was a criticism of Kiffin, and listen, I don't think it's fair all that much to criticize Lane. He won.
Yep.
This is a scoreboard business.
Right.
This is a business where it is about who can score the most points. It's really elementary. It starts 0-0 every single game, and they keep the score. It's one of the last true meritocracies, right, of society. The best teams win, and the best teams get the stuff. Right. So, Lane's teams won, but mostly they won with offense.
Mm-hmm.
And now they have Pete Golding's the new head coach. He was Lane's defensive coordinator. Before that, he was Nick Saban's defensive coordinator. He's obviously a defense guy, and they spent more of their money on defense this time around, and they returned some guys from a year ago: Cam Franklin, Will Eccles, Antonio Knight, Kite. I mean, I'm sorry. They've got and then they went in the portal, and they added impact players in the portal on defense on all three levels. They completely revamped their linebacker room. Not to pick on their linebackers from a year ago, but if you go back and look at the games where Ole Miss lost at Georgia, and then in the semifinals to Miami, they lost because of linebacker play.
Yeah, they left a lot to be desired. Mm-hmm.
And they've fixed that, or they feel like they have fixed that. And if they have, and they're better on the deep back end, then I think they clearly will be. They're going to be really good. And look, if you take some pressure off of Trinidad Chambliss, off of Kewan Lacy offensively, and let defense win some games, I think they are one of several dangerous teams in the SEC.
I love this. And do they still have the kicker? I can't think of his name.
Lucas Carnero.
What is because isn't he like one of the best kickers in college football?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
if not the best kicker in college football.
Yeah, I mean, he's in that mix, right? I mean, there's 3 or 4 guys that are all in that area. I mean, these kids now, like around the country, these kids that can consistently boom 50-yarders. I mean, it's unbelievable. But yeah, he was, he hit that 56-yarder in the Sugar Bowl, and then hit the game-winning kick at the end. That was from, I think, 47, 48.
Yeah.
That was one of those moments. I don't know if you've ever covered a game or been at a game in the Superdome. The media section is 7 stories up. And I still remember the impact. You heard ball hit foot hit ball.
Oh, wow.
Sounded like a cannon shot. And it was like, as soon as he hit it, I was like, oh, that's good.
It's good. Yeah. As soon as he kicked it. Yeah. At home, I was like, yeah. And I'm one of those people. I'm one of those people that special teams is 1/3 of a football team. I talk about special teams, and everyone's like, oh, here she goes again with this. And I'm like, well, because we never talk about them. And they matter. And when you don't have a good kicker, and when you do have a good kicker and punter too. And so, so he is there. Awesome. Well, I love that. Where do you feel as you assess this team? What is something that you're like, okay, this could not go the way they're hoping? Like, what is something that you're looking at where you're going, I'm just not sure how I feel? It doesn't mean it's bad. It's just something that you're just not sure how it's going to pan out.
Offensive line.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this is going to become a trend in college football because, I mean, fewer kids play high school football, and the kids that do play will play a lot of 7-on-7. Offensive line's not a glamour position, and so there are fewer of them. I mean, I was at media days. I was talking to people who are around the Texas program, or around the Texas A&M program. They would all say, Oklahoma, as long as offensive line hangs.
Yeah.
And Ole Miss is in that category. Ole Miss, they lost both their tackles. They returned their center guard.
Okay.
They have they brought in some transfers that they like. I think they're enthusiastic about them. They're unproven. And then depth is an issue. It's an issue everywhere, but it's kind of like that deal, right? When you failed a test in school and you came home and you said, "Hey, Mom, I failed," and she got mad at you, and you said, "Well, everybody else failed too."
Everybody.
It didn't change the fact that you failed. And
Right.
so for Ole Miss, right, if you told me that this thing went off the rails in a negative way, I would say, well, they had a bunch of injuries up front. And it's games that maybe they would have won by 3 or 4, now they lose by 3 or 4. Because I do think that the league is that close. And so, they're going to have to be really careful and lucky. Last year, they were very fortunate. I mean, they had 5 offensive linemen that stayed healthy the whole year, and they ended up being a really good unit. And sometimes you have that work out for you, and sometimes you have a rash of injuries, and it just devastates the season. And that's luck of draw kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah. One thing Coach Sark said, this was at the very beginning of the offseason, and it stuck with me. He said, offensive lineman right now in college football is like the NFL's version of dead money, because it's a very rare guy that's going to come in and start as a true freshman and be amazing, but you still have to pay them the big money because they are an offensive lineman. And so you're right. There's this weird thing in college football where it's like everybody needs them. Everybody wants them. There's not enough of them. And you just never know who's going to hit, who's not going to hit. So you're right. I feel like it's interesting. And you have to develop them. They have to learn. They have to do the thing.
It's absolutely a development position that takes a lot of time. It's a skill position, if you will, because it's about footwork and hand placement. And frankly, a lot of the kids that a generation ago played football and became offensive linemen, well, now they play baseball year round. And
sure.
It's just the way, the travel baseball is a huge thing.
Yeah.
And so you have kids that, that 6'4" kid that they would put weight on and build him up over time. Now that kid's a first baseman. He's a pitcher.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And if you want to play high level baseball, you have to play year round.
Yeah, that's true.
There's just fewer of them. And so, he's right. They come at a premium. And look, I mean, what did LSU paid Jordan Seaton to transfer in? I mean, he's one of the highest paid players on their team. The reason for that is those guys, you can lose a wide receiver and go find other wide receivers. You can lose a safety and go find other safeties. Quarterbacks, offensive tackles, defensive ends that can get to the quarterback, those guys come at a premium because you can always go find the 6-foot guy that's 200 pounds that can run. The 6'5", 230-pound guy that can get off a defensive end, and those cats don't grow on trees, and so they come at a premium. And the 6'6" offensive tackle with good feet, there just aren't a lot of those guys.
Right.
So, it's hard to replace them, and it's hard to find them. And I think Ole Miss is okay up front as long as they don't have injuries. The injuries. The injuries would be rough for them if they had to start shuffling people. Like they have, for example, Patrick Kudus, all SEC offensive guard. There's some people around the program that say, hey, well, if we lost a tackle, we could move him to tackle. Okay, he's not as good at tackle as he is at guard. Handle it. Now you have to put in an inferior guard. So you weakened yourself at 2 spots. And offensive line is about playing together and everybody understanding each other's role and all of those things, especially when you're going up against some of the defenses in this league, like Georgia and Texas and Oklahoma and Alabama, where you're going up against really talented defensive fronts.
Yeah. Okay. What is something outside of the fan base? Like, because you do interact with a lot of fans. You're not a fan yourself, but you do interact with, or you see probably what they're talking about, what's going on. What is something that you often see or hear about, or maybe that you just think about when you're just around the program and covering them, that you feel like just gets misunderstood or over talked about, or maybe just not talked about enough?
Gosh, that's a good question, because the last few years it was just Kiffin.
All the time.
Kiffin and what Kiffin's going to do, and a few years ago, is he going to go to Auburn? Is he not going to go to Auburn? And then last season it was, is he going to Florida? Is he going to LSU? I mean, that story was hot by the middle of October.
It was.
And it was daily. It was literally daily for 50 days. It truly was. It was every single day for 50 days. I thought last season Trinidad and or Kewan. Don't get me wrong, the Heisman got it. The Heisman got it right. Mendoza absolutely was the guy who should have won the Heisman. He had a great season. But I thought had Kiffin not consumed all of the oxygen in a normal year, one of those guys probably is on the stage in New York for the Heisman. They had that kind of year. And so they were completely
especially after that Oklahoma. Especially after that Oklahoma. I felt like after Oklahoma, for me, that was when I woke up. And I was like, wait a minute, what is this team doing? Like, what do they think they're doing? So,
and then they ran the table in November and made it to the tournament. And I think a lot of people, obviously the storyline then was, well, Kiffin left. And so it's Pete Golding. And are they just Kiffin? And then we had the story where you had coaches going back and forth, literally.
The plane ride or whatever.
The week of the Sugar Bowl in New Orleans, they would be with Ole Miss in the day in Baton Rouge recruiting for LSU at night. I mean, it was crazy.
Yeah.
So, I think what got lost to answer your question, what I think a lot of people don't know about that program, because it was Kiffin all the time, was that the foundation of that program over the years was a lot more than Lane Kiffin.
Yeah.
That's pretty good coaching staff, really good collective. They have an AD and a president who are very supportive and connected to athletics, football, of course, being the bell cow of that. I think that's and look, again, I get it. I mean, I made a lot of money off Lane Kiffin over the last 6 years. Lane Kiffin's name in an SEO drives it to the top. You put Lane Kiffin's picture in a story, it's going to get better Google hits. I 1,000% get it.
He's like Coach Prime. Coach Prime's like that.
Yeah,
some people, no matter what you say, once you drop it in there, they're like, "Oh my God, what is it? What is it?"
Yeah, 100%. Right. I mean, there's certain people that just draw people's attention. If you're an NBA guy, right? I mean, you find any way you can to mention LeBron James.
Yep. NFL, Dallas Cowboys.
The Cowboys, exactly. I mean, this the LeBron, where's he going to go thing. A lot of people are like, man, this is getting old. But there were multiple. Like, I laughed. There's a Minnesota Timberwolves podcast that I listened to sometime, and I think they knew they weren't getting LeBron, but the guy admitted on the show, he goes, "Hey, I'm going to take every opportunity to get him in the SEO. Right? It's going to raise his views, raise his listens." That was Kiffin, and so now he's gone to LSU, and I think, maybe I'll be wrong, I think people are going to be surprised to see just how solid the program is post Kiffin, and that's taking nothing away from Lane. I mean, again, people get mad at me for doing this because there are some people around the Ole Miss sphere who are trying to revise history, and suddenly Lane Kiffin was just this weird dude and all that stuff, and that's all true. But he won games. He won games, and that's what you paid him to do. And he won a bunch, 55 of them to be specific, over 6 years. That's a lot.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure there's probably, I don't know, 100 and whatever programs that would love Lane Kiffin to walk through their door. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, there are only two in the SEC over the last 5 years that would not make the trade, right? It's Georgia and Alabama.
Exactly.
And frankly, Alabama probably would think about it. But, Georgia's the only one that would go, no, we're good.
Yeah. The Alabama, I'm not even going there. So do you have a bold prediction this year? So I want to position this in a different way, basically because my research and development department, that would be me, watched you on a show and you said something that sparked something for me. So I'm going to take this in two different ways, whichever way you choose. So the question is, do you have a bold prediction about Ole Miss this year? But you mentioned something that I've been saying about the 9-3 SEC school because of the schedule and the way that this is structured, where the SEC could potentially eat themselves and could potentially beat themselves, and it could potentially get very weird. And your 3 losses could be, I'm making this up, Georgia, Alabama, Texas. Like, does that mean you're not good? Or does that, what does that look like? So I would love to know either your bold prediction this year, or how do you feel about this 9-3 thing? Like, do you think the committee is going to look at the strength of schedule and allow an SEC 9-3 school in, depending on who the losses are to? Or how are you feeling about this? Because I feel like we're on the same wavelength. So I wanted to get your opinion on like what you think about that as a whole.
Yeah, I think it's going to be the biggest story in November.
Okay.
And if you watch some of the messaging coming out of the Big Ten media days this week out of Chicago, there was a lot of shots at the SEC. I thought that was intentional. From a PR standpoint.
Me too. Yes.
A PR standpoint, I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah.
You know, like them going, hey, look, for years, all you guys talked about was you won championships. And now we've won the championships, and you guys are going, oh, yeah, but our league's better top to bottom.
Right.
I will tell you this. There are 3 games that I'm interested in fairly early in the season. Ohio State, Texas. Michigan, Oklahoma.
Yep.
And Mississippi State, Minnesota. That's a game nobody talks about. Mississippi State and Minnesota play in Minneapolis. Look, you know, those are 2 teams. They're not winning championships.
No.
They're not making the playoffs. But we do this depth of league thing. You know, where the SEC, it was a big talking point last week in Tampa was, man, you know, the league's so good top to bottom. And listen, it is. And those of us who cover the SEC and see it week to week, we get it. But I don't know that argument resonates nationally the way that people in the SEC think it should.
I agree.
And so here's the thing. This is not – so the conventional wisdom right now is that there's 7 teams in the SEC that are playoff caliber teams.
Okay.
No particular order. Georgia, Texas, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, LSU, Alabama, Oklahoma.
Okay.
Some people think Tennessee's going to be in that mix. Favorable schedule, really talented team, counting on a young quarterback, but the young quarterback's really talented. And Josh Heupel's a kind of a quarterback whisperer. So let's let them check a few of those boxes, and let's say Tennessee's really good. Okay, that's half the league.
Right.
And so you take the other half of the league. Missouri's been solid for years, probably will stay solid. Florida's probably going to be a little better under John Sumrall. Auburn's probably going to take a little tick up, just new coach, fresh energy, all the free stuff out of the way. Clark Lee is telling people this is maybe the best defense he's had at Vanderbilt. They're counting on a young quarterback, but this was a young quarterback that everybody recruited. When we're not talking about this is not some kid off the scrap heap. Jared Curtis got recruited by everyone. So there's talent there. How quickly can you make him produce in the SEC? I don't know. Is he good enough to be really good one game? So that's South Carolina's probably going to be a little better, right? Kendall Briles is there, the offensive coordinator. You know, do he and Lenoris Sellers kind of figure out some things? Because Lenoris is incredibly gifted. Struggled last year, but you know that doesn't mean he'll struggle this year. And they're 2 years removed from being a 9-3 team at South Carolina. So who's left? Mississippi State, young quarterback, really talented kid that everybody's excited about. What if they take just a little tick up? I'm not saying, hey, they go beat the world. What if they just take a little tick up? Kentucky's got a new coach, Will Stein, did a great job at Oregon, real confident guy. What if Kentucky's just a little better? Arkansas's got half of their rosters new coach in Silverfield. They went 0-8 in the league last year. What if they go let's give them 1-8 in the league. All right.
Yeah.
So this is not some bold prediction. They win one game. It means they beat somebody.
Yeah.
And then you have these other, like Ole Miss has a stretch of games where they play at Texas, home against Auburn, home against Georgia, at Oklahoma in 4 consecutive weeks. Well, my ULM math tells me that means that's 4 games. That's 4 L's that have to be passed out. Somebody has to absorb these L's. Texas plays Oklahoma. LSU plays Texas. LSU plays Ole Miss. You have all of these teams play each other, and they're going to distribute L's. That's just how it works.
Right.
And unless you believe there's a couple of teams, and if you do, you might end up being right. I don't know. maybe there's a couple of teams that are indeed better than everyone else. Maybe Georgia and Texas are indeed so much better than everyone else that they go 12-0, 11-1. I kind of doubt it. And the reason I kind of doubt it is because a year ago, I look back 1 year. I covered a team that went 11-1, ended up going 13-2, and was one play away, one stop away in the fourth quarter from playing for the national championship. And that team was on the ropes in Lexington, Kentucky in September, and a week later was absolutely on the ropes at home in Oxford against an Arkansas team that didn't win an SEC game.
Right.
Texas could have easily lost at Kentucky last season. Yep. Texas could have easily lost to Mississippi State last season. Mm-hmm. Texas A&M could have easily lost to Arkansas last season. It was right there. And those were the bad teams in the league.
Right.
Kentucky, Mississippi State,
South
Arkansas.
Carolina.
Yeah. I mean, South Carolina led Texas A&M by 24 points or something like that at the half.
Yeah.
Like when people, it's the part, those of us who cover this and are around the league, we get it. We expect it. But to answer your question in a really long-winded fashion is if those teams that Ole Miss goes 9-3, LSU goes 9-3, Alabama goes 9-3, Oregon goes 10-2, Michigan goes 10-2,
mm-hmm.
Iowa goes 10-2. I don't know. Make up your big team of choice.
I even threw in a BYU 11-1.
Yeah. Okay.
What does that mean? Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think the committee has shown you that if you're an 11-1 team from the ACC or the Big 12, you're going to get in over a 9-3 SEC team.
Right.
And I think a 10-2 Big 10 team is probably going to get in over a 9-3 SEC team. Listen, there's a world where you only have two teams in the 12-team field, and it will be burning pitchfork and fire everywhere. But this is kind of predictable. And this is what happens when, your league sort of loses messaging a little bit. And I think they have. Mm-hmm. And, there's more to the 9-game thing than, Greg Sankey just did it. He's an idiot. No, that's not it. The TV people want better games.
Uh-huh.
They don't want to televise Texas versus Sam Houston, Ole Miss versus Wofford. They want better games. The league wanted more money. They got more money, and in return, they played better games. And so, look, is there a world this year with the 12-game playoff where the SEC gets what we all will view as screwed? Absolutely. I think it's very much on the table.
Yeah, I do too. And like I said, I was just glad to hear somebody else say it. You're saying the same things I'm saying it. You're saying it differently. But I think that is important because it's like, I'm not like a homer. Like I don't go like SEC or nothing because I think that's a little ridiculous. I'm a college football fan, but also we need to call out some of these obvious things. Like we can all, if you're paying attention, you can see it coming from a mile away. I mean, starting as soon as an SEC team loses, it doesn't matter who they lose to. It doesn't matter if it's a Texas team, an Ole Miss team, an Oklahoma. It doesn't matter. As soon as one of them lose, it's going to get a little bit interesting because and they're going to lose because Georgia versus Alabama, someone will lose. Georgia versus Oklahoma, someone will lose. And so,
well, even in the scenario where Georgia and Texas, I don't think they play each other in the regular season. So let's do Georgia and Texas both go 12-0. I mean, awesome for them, right? What does that mean?
Yeah.
But what does that mean?
All those other teams lost.
It means that Ole Miss plays both Georgia and Texas, so they have 2 losses.
Yep, that's 2.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
You could go down the list. Everybody that plays Georgia, it's an L. Everybody who plays Texas, that's an L.
Right.
If you're Oklahoma, I think Oklahoma plays Georgia and Texas. So that's 2 L's. Oklahoma and Ole Miss play each other. One of them's losing. That's 3.
Right.
What is that? Even in a world where there's 2 teams better than everyone else, well, then everybody, because of this 9th game, is picking up an additional loss, and the math starts to math after a while.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you. And I'm actually glad that I decided to take the conversation that way instead of asking the other questions, because I think this is more pertinent to Ole Miss very specifically. And I think this is more pertinent to college football because ultimately I'm seeing this as 2 seasons, the regular season, and then the college football playoffs. And in order for you to get to the college football playoffs, the regular season matters. And that's what this is. And I don't know if people are aware of it enough. We're getting excited for, oh, look, how many great weekends of football, all these great matchups. And I'm like, we realize what that means, right? There's a cause and there's an effect of all of this. And I don't know if we see the effect yet.
I'll give you another storyline to keep an eye on holistically as the league goes on. I was talking to Will Eccles, Ole Miss's All-SEC defensive lineman in Tampa, and it was just kind of a throwaway line for him. But he was talking. Someone asked him about the 9-game schedule, and he was talking about, every game matters because once you get a third loss, you're out. And I thought, it's interesting. I kind of wonder if that's the pervasive thought of the players. And look, every single bit of evidence supports his assertion.
100%.
Okay? So he's probably right.
Yeah.
So, but what if you're one of these SEC teams with the big payroll that's kind of going paycheck to paycheck with paying the players? You get that third loss in early to mid-October. Keeping a team motivated to play, keeping a fan base motivated to pay.
Yeah.
Those will be
all
things
backfire.
Well, yeah, it could really, because you have these teams full of 40, 50 new players every year. The fans don't know who these people are.
Yeah.
And when they're winning, everybody loves it. If they're not winning and you don't the players, well, now you're kind of cheering for the laundry. And cheering for the laundry is not nearly as much fun as cheering for human beings. And so I'm interested, right? Because look, like Ole Miss and LSU play this game on September the 19th that everybody's obsessed with, and I get it. But on September the 20th, one of those teams is waking up with at least one loss.
Yeah, already September.
Margin for error cut in half, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's, you look around, like I think Oklahoma plays Georgia in September. They play Texas in pretty early October.
Yeah, October.
People are going to lose those games. How you handle that when you get up against it or when you get a third loss. Can a coach convince an SEC team, hey, guys, we still have our destiny in front of us? Like in basketball, in baseball, look at this last baseball season. Oklahoma was 11th.
Yeah, that was crazy.
They made the tournament, right? That you never – Skip Johnson never had to worry about, okay, how am I going to motivate these guys to go to work, to play? Right. Because he can still tell them everything that you dream about. All of your goals are still in front of you. Like if you're I don't know, I'm trying to think of basketball, John Calipari or someone like that. Your team loses a couple 3 games in November. It's not ideal, but it's not the end of the world. You still tell them, hey guys, everything you dreamed of, getting to Detroit for the Final Four, it's absolutely still on your plate.
Right.
It's right there. That's not the case in football. It's still a regular season sport to some degree. I mean, I think we're going to go to a 2014 playoff, and then it's going to be less of one.
Do you really?
Right now, yeah, I think it's inevitable.
Oh, okay.
I'm with you. I have the exact same reaction. I don't think it's great, but I think that's where we're headed. But man, when you're on a 12-team playoff and you get a third loss, guys are going to start thinking about, all right, well, do I need to keep playing? Do I need to protect? Do I need to start thinking about the portal? What do I need to do? Hey, some of the money they were told me they were going to pay me, I didn't get it. I'm a little pissed off. Am I even motivated to play?
Yeah,
that's and I'm glad the kids are getting paid. Don't get me wrong. I'm glad.
Me too.
I'm a capitalist. Make your money, but when you have a system that has no guardrails, you cannot act shocked when things go off.
When it goes off the rails, there's no guardrails.
You just can't be stunned.
And
I think I won't be surprised if we get some of that this year.
Okay. Well, listen, I could talk to you about football probably for a few hours, but we're not going to do that. I appreciate you just talking to me about Ole Miss and giving a different perspective other than we're the best. Oh my gosh. Have you, like sometimes I'm like, I need more, give me more things that I can think about after this. And so I just appreciate you taking the time, responding to my DM, all those things.
Sure.
And you've been amazing. And I've appreciated just watching other content too. So it's just amazing when you get to collaborate in this space. So thank you for coming and talking to me, trusting me to do this thing that you're kind of like, I'm like, trust me, we're going to do this. It's going to be great. So I appreciate you for doing that. And then, like I said at the beginning of this, everything, all of your information will be in the description. They can find it very easily. I'll tweet episodes when they go out and all that stuff too. So they can find you very easily. If they don't know who you are, I'm pretty sure most people do, but you never know. So anything you want to say to end this, and whenever you're done, we'll end on you.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you taking the time and having me on. I had a lot of fun. Thanks for pushing some of our stuff on your platform, and hope you enjoy a great season.
Yeah, I hope so, man. Who knows? If it all goes off the rails, though, you'll be hearing from me. I'm going to reach back out, and I'm going to be like, we have to talk about this.
It's going to go off the rails for somebody. I mean, I don't even think that's a bold prediction. I think that's going to happen. You asked about an Ole Miss prediction. Listen, I think Ole Miss is one of those big variance teams. If you told me Ole Miss was playing for the national championship in January, I'd believe it. If you told me that they lost 4 or 5 games, I'd believe it. Anything in between. I mean, I do think the top half of the league is pretty even. And then I think the bottom half of the league is a little better than we're probably giving it credit for. And
I agree.
They're going to have, even though those teams aren't going to make the playoffs and win championships, I do think they're going to impact things.
Yeah, I'm keeping my eye on Kentucky. But anyways,
Sure.
I'll end there. Thanks.
Thank you.